Hello, my name is Lauren. I run a small ceramics business called From Tree to Sea, and this is my ceramics journey story / Q&A. I get asked a lot how I got into ceramics, how I became a full-time artist. I've tried to film this so many times, and I'm just gonna try and be really casual with it because I don't know why. This subject matter just, like, I feel like a lot of pressure to get it right, to keep it short and sweet, but also interesting. So I have been running my ceramics business for 2 years full-time. I started at the very end of 2019, and oh, maybe it's been 3 years. As you can see, I am coming to you from the home office instead of the studio. I am just home filming today, so I figured we could keep this casual. Let me take it back to when I was a small child and I loved to play around with Sculpey, Fimo, polymer clay, making little figurines for family members, kind of just exploring whatever my imagination wanted to bring to life. Really wanted to be an artist when I was younger. Specifically, I wanted to be a cartoonist because I read a lot of Garfield and Archie comics and I just loved comics. So growing up, I did drawing classes, painting classes, but I had never really tried ceramics apart from just playing with polymer clay on my own. In high school, my friends and I were a bunch of little entrepreneurs. We all kind of wanted to work for ourselves. In 2012, 2013, we were making handmade jewelry. We went to a yoga festival and there was a pottery tent. And that's where I first ever got my hands dirty with clay. I was very intimidated by the wheel. I had a lot of help from the instructor and I still ended up making a super wonky bowl. Then in 2015, I made a long list of New Year's resolutions and pottery classes were at the very top of the list. At the time, I was working as a species at risk biologist for the Canadian Wildlife Service, and I had a degree in environment and resource studies with a certification in ecological restoration. So something totally different than what I'm doing today. I wanted something that would fuel my creative side and kind of like have an outlet that was not related to work at all. And so I started a 6-week pottery class at a local studio in Oakville, Ontario, where I'm originally from. It was actually a paint your own pottery studio, but they had about 8 wheels in the back. I took this class with my aunt. We learned how to coil build, slab build, throw on the wheel, paint with cobalt, kind of a little bit of everything. And when we finished the 6 weeks, I felt like my adventures with clay were not over. At the time I was living in North Toronto, North York. I found a pottery supply place. I bought a couple bags of clay. I set up a little desk, got some tools, and just started hand building. So eventually I got to a point where I needed to fire my work and I was looking for kiln rentals. I found this lovely studio run by 2 grandmothers, and eventually I ended up paying for a bit of a membership, just studio time, so I'd pay per hour and pay for my kiln firings. And it was there that I really kind of expanded on my practice because prior to that, I was like, I'm just gonna become a hand builder. The wheel is too intimidating. It moves too fast. You have to like watch the speed, watch your hands. Like it's too easy to mess up. Hand building, you have a lot more control, is how I felt. But while I was there, I got a lot of tips and pointers from the ladies running the place, and slowly but surely, I gained confidence in being able to center and being able to work on the wheel and started trying to throw bigger and bigger amounts of clay. point where I was just like drowning in pottery. I was giving some away to friends, but I thought, hey, I could just kind of sell things and just pay for this hobby on the side. Like, that would be really fun, and who knows what could come of it. And I started an Etsy shop called From Tree to Sea, based on the work that I was doing as my career at the time. Obviously very environmental themed, which I've kept to this day. So I started selling on Etsy, caught the eye of some shops in Toronto who wanted some wholesale orders, which was very exciting. My first wholesale order was for Hunt and Gather Floral in Toronto. I made kind of like a random collection of pieces for them in the colors that they requested. Through that, I started doing a couple local markets. So I did one at Raw Space, which is in Leslie. I did one at Kid Icarus. I just started kind of like selling my wares wherever I could. And I really loved the market environment. I liked getting to talk to people about the work I was doing, even though looking back, a lot of my stuff was still pretty like new to ceramics. Long story short, I just continued pursuing pottery as kind of a side thing alongside my In 2017, after lots of dreaming about it, I quit my job and decided to travel across Canada for a year. I had saved up money from my job at this point, and it was really an adventure of a lifetime. Thought I'd end up in BC. I knew I'd end up out west somewhere, but ended up settling in Calgary because I found Workshop Studios, which is a ceramic studio here in Calgary. They had really affordable memberships, so I got a membership. I signed up for my first market before I even had officially moved to the city. That's kind of where things started unfolding for me. I just tried to continue doing as many markets as I could, get my name out there locally, and kind of build my business in that way. People always ask how I built my business, and the answer is lots of local events, lots of meeting people, but also lots of posting on Instagram, just consistently posting whatever I was up to, whatever I was working on. And this was at a time where there was not a ton of ceramics on Instagram, especially not a lot of people doing it full time. So this is kind of early days, and doing that very first market when I moved here is actually how I got my part-time job at Plant, which is a plant store here. If you've watched my vlogs, you've seen me mention them before. The owner actually came and got some of my pottery for a Secret Santa gift for some of the staff, and I applied for a job there, and suddenly I was working there part-time, doing my pottery part-time, and it was like the perfect combo. So I continued to grow the business and work at the plant shop until 2019, when I actually got an offer to go back to Toronto for 3 months and work at my old job just on a contract. And at that time I was already kind of weighing whether I wanted to continue doing pottery part-time or switch to full-time, because business was booming. I was really enjoying my time in the studio. I was kind of starting to wish I was there more and more. And so the way I kind of figured that out is that I calculated all the hours I spent working at the plant shop, how much I was getting paid, and then compared that to how many pieces I could make in that same amount of time, what I was charging at the time, and kind of just figured out the amount of money I could potentially make from both. Knowing that I was going back for this contract, I was in the mindset that, okay, I would save the money from this contract, go full-time with pottery, see how it goes, and have that kind of to fall back on financially. And so I took a risk. Then the pandemic happened. The positive thing about that is that a lot of people were shopping online, so it was actually a really good time to be selling work online. But I definitely would have been struggling a lot more had I not saved up and kind of considered all my options at the time. Knowing that I could potentially go back to that part-time job if things didn't work out full-time was definitely helpful in figuring out whether I could do it or not. I will say that a lot of people make it look really easy to do art full-time, but there are definitely a lot of things to consider when you make it your full-time job. There, again, is the pressure to create things that people will buy in order to pay your bills, and that can be a very complicated thing to navigate day to day. Additionally, I moved in with my partner, which obviously helped with paying rent and buying groceries together. All those things are factors to consider. And it's important to understand that everybody's journey is different and things happen for everybody in their own time. So luckily things have aligned for me to be doing what I'm doing now, but it took a long time to get there. Like I said, I've been doing pottery for 6-7 years, and so it's been like a slow, gradual thing building the business. And I'm still a very small business. My Instagram account isn't huge. YouTube has definitely helped. I think that's been a great way to kind of reach other people that maybe I wouldn't reach with Instagram. So some questions that I get asked a lot How do you deal with imposter syndrome and comparing yourself to others? So the best piece of advice I ever got, your biggest competition is your past self. Sometimes it's really important to take a step back, look at the big picture and see how far you've come from where you began. And as long as you're like growing and evolving and trying your best to continue making things better, like that's all you can really ask for. It doesn't make sense to compare your journey to somebody else's because you don't know all the external factors that affect someone's practice. We're all going at a different pace, and that's okay, and that's what makes everybody's work and life so unique, right? The other biggest thing is also getting off the internet and going outside. I would say that's usually what my remedy is for when I start getting too in my head, too competition-y, and too insecure about my own work. I totally understand the imposter syndrome thing. I still get that from time to time. Not coming from any sort of art education background, it's very easy to doubt yourself and wonder if you're good enough to be doing what you're doing. But I think it's also helpful to understand that everybody goes through that, and it doesn't last forever. Sometimes you just need a break. I feel like living in this internet area, it's very easy to see what everybody else is doing and feel very overwhelmed. There's so much potential to do anything with this medium. It's okay if you can't do it all. Like, you're not meant to do it all. Focus on what you want to do and what you like, and that's good. Put your blinders on. What inspires you, / how do you stay inspired, / how do you get out of a creative rut? For me, I usually find the most inspiration when I'm out of the studio, actually. When I'm on a walk near the river or walking around with Remy, hanging out with other creatives. I love to go to used bookstores and kind of peruse through the art section and find old pottery books or old painting books even. Whatever inspires ideas for form, shape, color. I've been doing this thing lately when I see a color palette that I really like on Instagram. I will screenshot it and put it in a folder for future reference. I recently did this. I made a cup based off of a tea towel that I saw in a friend's Instagram story, and it was just like a really fun experimental thing to play around with. Another great way to get inspired is to learn. So if you've been watching my vlogs for a while, you saw that I did the Women in Clay workshop with Gasworks in New York. We're living in a Zoom era, so there's so much opportunity to learn from people all over the world, and there's so many great ceramic artists who have such a wealth of knowledge, and it can be very inspiring seeing what they're up to, the way they run their studios. Another great platform that I have used since early days of my ceramics journey is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for you to explore your creativity, learn new skills, and get inspired. If you're new to pottery, there are classes that take you through the full process of creating your very own mug, using slump molds, and hand building. I love these classes by Helen Levi and Emily Reinhardt, the object enthusiast, and I just find it interesting to see what techniques other potters use. I've recently been exploring this class on mold making. I'd love to try slip casting in the future. It's a goal of mine. I always want to keep growing, I want to keep learning, and Skillshare is a great place to do that. The first 1,000 people to use the link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, and thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. What type of underglazes do you use / what glazes do you use? How do you mix your own glazes? Underglazes, almost always use Mako underglazes for everything that I do. A few colors I use Amico just because I like them better. I don't recommend the Mako browns because they've been giving me so much trouble lately. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. For glazes, maybe I'll do a future video on glazes specifically, but typically mix my own. When I first started out, I definitely bought pre-mixed commercial glazes just because there were so many things in the pottery realm that I was trying to figure out that it was just easier to kind of just have that not be something I needed to fully understand at the time. But as I continued in my practice, I began to understand the importance of being able to mix your own glazes. You can just do so much more with that. There's so much potential, and it's also much more cost effective to mix your own. One thing I will say is that you do need a fair amount of storage to be able to store your materials, your minerals. I didn't necessarily have the capacity to do that before. There is glazy.org, which is a great website for tried and tested glaze recipes. And also I have John Britt Mid-Fire Glaze book. I'll link it down below too. You can get it pretty much anywhere. That's a really handy one as well. There are a few glazes in there I am dying to try out and have tried out. But again, I will try to do a more in-depth glaze video in the future. Where did the name From Tree to Sea come from? Well, as I mentioned, I have an environmental background, and that actually was the first name I used to sell my handmade jewelry through. I did knitting for a moment. I kind of just always knew I wanted to run my own business, and so that was the name I picked. I've stuck with it because I still feel like I identify with it. I do a lot of nature-themed pieces as well, whether the color palette is inspired by flora and fauna or I have actual animals painted on pieces. I think it fits still. Maybe I'll change it in the future to just my name, who knows. I wanted to keep this video kind of short, so that's it for now, but if you enjoyed it, please like it. If you want to see what's up next, please subscribe. If you have any questions that you would like for me to answer in a future Q&A video, I might do this again. Leave them down below, whatever you want me to answer. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.